before we jump into this, so we got a new series, right? We got a new series called Fresh, which is awesome, and I'm very happy to be, starting off and kicking it off. We got a new 4-week series, so that should be pretty cool. Here's the thing, though. In fact, Teddy, can you start that for me, sir? Yes, who remembers Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, man? Right? Gotta love it. And so when Pastor Teddy told me about we had a new series called Fresh, I was like, the first thing that popped in my head was Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, and I was like, man, I love kind of the idea of something new and something, vibrant coming from that. Some of you know that my wife and I, we got a little side business, and we do photography and stuff like that. And so we had an opportunity last weekend to shoot a wedding in Cabo. And in fact, the newlyweds are actually here. Some of my friends, Shamila and Bakari, they're here. My favorite newlyweds yet. But it was interesting. So then we get to the airport in Cabo, and when we get there, the way it's set up, you get out of the terminal, and there's kind of like the area, the baggage claim area, and then you get from the baggage claim area to like another little area where they like set you up for cars and transportation and stuff. Then from there you get outside where all the actual transportation is at. So we're in the kind of like the main part of the airport. And we get out to like the lobby area where folks are like setting you up with transportation. So the guys at the desk, and he's like, hey, Migo, he goes, you got transportation? And I was like, yeah, we got transportation. And then he says, okay, he goes, let me tell you something. He said, when you walk out of here, he says, there's gonna be a bunch of people in the airport, they're gonna be asking you for a ride. Like they're gonna be trying to give you a ride. And I was like, okay. And he goes, don't get in the car with them, Migo. Don't get in the car. He goes, they'll disappear you. And so I was like, I shouldn't get disappeared, man. I said, so I won't do that, right? I won't get in the car. So he walked outside, and sure enough, they're right there. They're like, hey, get in the car. I was like, no. So they just told me that you can disappear me. So no, I'm not gonna do that, right? So then we get outside, and we get, there's somebody there who has our sign up, and it was cool because it was such a tropical environment and so nice and everything like that. So it was something new for us. It was something fresh, and so when I kind of reflect back on that, and I'll tell you guys a few things about that as well. But when I reflect back on that and start thinking about a lot of the things that I was digging into for this particular sermon, one of the things that kind of resonated with me is this idea that we're kind of in a time period right now where we see a lot of people kind of coming in and going out of the church, right? They're in and they're out, they're leaving and and we try to wonder, like, why are people coming in and out of the church so frequently, and why aren't they staying? What's going on? And then it kind of raises this idea, like, maybe the church has an image problem. Maybe people see the church in one particular light, and they should be seeing us in a different light. So we're going to start here. If you have your Bibles, you can turn with us to 1 Corinthians chapter 1. Paul wrote a couple letters, as we all know. He wrote a couple letters to some folks. But this letter that he has to the Corinthians is very, very interesting because if you've read through that entire chapter, especially if you've read through, or say this entire first book, a couple times in this area of 1 Corinthians, Paul's actually trying to admonish us about a couple things. So this is what it says, 1 Corinthians 1 through 10, or 1 Corinthians 1, 10 through 17. I appeal to you, brothers, in the name of our Lord Jesus Christ, that all of you agree with one another so that there may be no divisions among you. Everybody say no divisions.
No divisions.
That you may be perfectly united in mind and thought. My brother, some from Chloe's household have informed me that there are quarrels among you. Everybody say quarrels.
Quarrels.
What I mean is this. One of you says, I follow Paul. Another, I follow Apollos. Another, I follow Cephas. Still another, I follow Christ. Is Christ divided? Was Paul crucified for you? Were you baptized in the name of Paul? All those are rhetorical questions, right? Paul's just rhetorically asking all these questions. He's trying to get the people here to see, look, why are you quarreling? Why are you fighting and being divided over some of the most minute and insignificant things? Like all these people you're talking about, Apollos and Cephas, we all are aiming towards following Christ. So why are we so divided? If you skip down to verse 17, it says this: for Christ did not send me to baptize, but to preach the gospel, not with words of human wisdom, lest the cross of Christ be emptied of its power. One of the things, and hopefully we'll see this as we move forward, but here's the thing. The kind of the overall point that I'm hoping everyone kind of pulls out of this is this, and it should pop up on the slides in a second here, but the image that we represent to the world can either be one that reinforces the negative ideas that people have about the church, or it can be one that displays the true nature of Christ, which is a message of love and unity, right? trying to go there. Oh, the church is crazy. We don't have to do any extra work to help people have a bad image of the church, right? We don't gotta work hard about that. People already have a negative view of the church, and so we have to ask ourselves, well, what are we doing as it pertains to us locally and globally? Are we displaying a message that only reinforces people's idea of who the church is, or are we showing them something different? Are we, quote unquote, are we being fresh? And so the idea is, do we have to change who we are? I don't think so. I think if we look at what was going on in the early church, it's not so much about changing who we are, changing what we do. It's actually going back to what was working for the early church. Because if you read through the Acts of the Apostles, you see that their numbers were growing exponentially every single day. And so you have to ask, well, why aren't our numbers growing? Why aren't we getting better? Why aren't we moving forward? What's going on? Do we need to change all these things? We see a lot of stuff changing in the church, but then we don't see it being effective. And so we have to ask, what actually is going on? And sometimes, I don't know about you, but sometimes for me, I have a hard time explaining to people what makes my church different maybe than somebody else's church, right? Because they'll say, well, is there preaching? I'm like, yeah. Like, do y'all have offering? Yeah. Do y'all sing songs? Yeah. It's like, okay, that's like every other church then. So what makes your church different or better than the church I'm going to? And I think on some level, sometimes we start looking at leadership, especially globally, right? Let's just talk globally for a second. We start looking at leadership that exists, and we start kind of putting our faith or putting our trust in different leaders. It's like, well, T. Jakes is the best pastor. It's like, no, it's Joel Osteen or it's Joyce Myers or whatever. We start kind of identifying with these different people the same way they were doing at the church in Corinth, right? They're just, oh, no, it's Apollo, it's Cephas, it's Paul. It's like, no. Right? If we're all aiming towards the same goal, then what's really the issue? What's really the problem? At a previous church that I used to go to, there was a pastor. Well, I should put it this way: he had the senior pastor, and the senior pastor sometimes he would tell us, kind of like what Pastor Tay just did right now, right? He would say, hey, next week, we got Pastor so-and-so who's going to come up and preach a word for us next week. And you could already hear people like, I ain't coming. Like, I ain't going to be here next week, right? Because I don't like the way he or she preaches, right? And we see that happen all the time. It's like, you just gave me a day off, Pastor. Thanks for telling me ahead of time so I wouldn't have to, come here and hear this, right? So, but we see it all the time, right? Because we start looking and start identifying and say, oh, I only want to hear this person preach, or I only want to see this person. And we start dividing ourselves more and more. And we have to ask ourselves, why are we doing that? Why are we dividing ourselves? And honestly, if you look through this passage in Corinthians, we see three things that are really kind of obvious as to where the divisions are coming from. Competition, fear, and pride. Competition, fear, and pride are the things that are kind of driving a lot of the divisions. And really, it's that we as Christians are missing the point that Christ has called us to be in sync, to utilize our gifts in different ways so that we're edifying people, we're building people up, rather than tearing apart the church in and of itself. So we're going to talk real quick about these three things: competition, fear, pride. Three things that we can see on a daily basis that are tearing the church apart. So there was, I'm trying to think how long ago, it was a while back, but there was a meeting I went to with a pastor one time out here in Vallejo. And it wasn't just a bunch of pastors, it was like pastors and then church folks, just a meeting, whatever they had. And one of the things I kept overhearing in that meeting was this question from several pastors asking each other. They kept saying, how many you running, Doc? How many you running? And at first I was like, what are you talking about? How many you running? How many you running? And so I asked the pastor that I came there with, I was like, what does that mean? How many you running? He's like, oh, he's asking me how many people we have in the church. What's my church congregation size, right? How many people we got? And so then I asked him, I said, well, why is that important? Right. He's like, because it is. That's what pastors talk about. We want to know how many people you got. And the thing about it is, I don't know about you guys, I've been approached sometimes by people so when I get approached by people and they ask me about my church, there's two questions they ask me. First is, where do you go? And the second question is, how big is it? That's right. Oh, where do you go? I go to such and such. Oh, how big is it? Well, why does it matter? Right? And then for me, again, I'm just talking about me, for me, I have the tendency to get a little defensive sometimes, right? I was like, why you asking me how big it is, right? But I try to respond in a way where I'm like, well, we're growing. And then I don't know if you've seen these people, but I've seen these people all the time. They're like, they want to give you information that you didn't ask for. It's like, oh, that's nice. Our church is like 400 or 500 people, I think. Yeah. We had such and such pastor come. I'm like, ain't nobody asked you that. Right. Ain't nobody asked you for that information, but you just want to volunteer, right? And so, to me, it just sometimes feels like this competition thing. Like, okay, now I got to compete with you to try to explain why my church is just as good as your church, or your church is less than my church. And the problem is that, and like I said, it may not be you, but it's me. I get sucked into it sometimes where I feel like I got to compete against people to explain why, or justify my church and where I'm going, right? And so what happens is that, we'll be standing there having a conversation with somebody in Walmart, and we're smiling and this and that, but all the while in our hearts and with our words, we're like, man, I can't stand this person, like, why are they doing this and why are they talking about this? And instead of seeing people as allies, we see them as a competition, right? If we're all preaching Christ, if we're all focusing on the gospel, why are we not allies? Instead, we end up in this competition of my church is better than your church. And then we get concerned about, are you going to poach people from my church? Right. I've had pastors talk to me. There was one time we were going to a church, and I told our pastor, I said, hey, we're going to go visit this other church. A friend of mine is preaching, we're going to go visit the church. He was very disturbed. He was like, hope they're not trying to poach y'all. And I'm like, hold on. I'm like, we just visited, man. Like, hold on, it's all good, right? And it becomes very, very, very. It's just interesting to see the kind of competition that exists sometimes in church. And when you look at it locally, are we doing that within even our own body? Are we competing against each other within our own body, right? So this is what I'm going to tell you. So we were in Cabo, right? And we're doing this, I know, it's tough work being in Cabo, I know. All right, so we're in Cabo shooting this wedding. And usually my wife and I, we typically find a way to like sit down sometime during the day, rest our feet and blah, blah, blah. But I mean, we're used to being on our feet all day long. And so it doesn't really bother us too much. I happen to pick, I don't know why I did this. I picked like the worst shoes to wear to this wedding, right? So I got the worst shoes on. And, so I was like looking for like a place to sit down more frequently because my feet were starting to kill me. And so by the time the night ended, like my feet were done. I'm talking my feet were done. And so I was thinking, because Carrie and I were like, we could go back to our room, we were putting our gear down, and we were thinking about going back out to like the little club they had at the resort to meet back up at the wedding party and have some fun, whatever. And my feet were like, no, you're not. They're like, sit down, right? I was like, no, I'm gonna try to get out there. And so then as I took a step, I kid you not, I took a step and it was like my foot just started screaming. It was like, ah! I was like, oh my gosh. And Kara's like, what is wrong? I said, my feet. I was literally walking through. It was like, ah. I was like, this. She's like, I know, my feet hurt too. I said, no, they don't hurt like my feet hurt, man. I said, my feet hurt so bad right now. And so I get over to the bed, and I'm laying down on the bed, and I'm thinking in my mind, I'm like, because I had been thinking about this sermon the entire time, but I was thinking in my mind, I was like, you know what? I said, it would be a crazy thing if my feet were trying to compete against like who can get the most steps in. Like I got more steps than you today, right? It's like why my feet aren't competing against each other, right? They're working in concert to make sure we get to a location, right? They're collaborating. It would be crazy for them to try to compete against each other for more steps, and especially at that point when they were hurting, like they could care less. Like I don't care who takes a step. This is get us where we need to go. But that's the whole thing too about a church, right? Especially when there's difficulty. That's the time we should come together even more, right? That's when there should be more unity, where the church is like, okay, I know this is difficult right now, but we're going to get in step, and we're going to get ourselves to that bed so we can lay down because our feet are killing us. But instead, we continue to fight, we continue to bicker, we continue to have this competition. And I think what Paul is talking about here is like, it doesn't matter if it's Apollos or Cephas it doesn't matter. What matters is, are we working together to achieve what Christ has put out for us to do? Are we working together? Fear. Second one is fear. And it's not like I'm afraid to go to church. I'm talking about a fear of being not recognized for your talents. Or fear of, what's it called? FOMO, fear of missing out. Fear of being invisible. Phobia, right? I don't want to become invisible in the church. I want people to recognize me for what I'm doing. Right. So it's real common to see this, right? So there's an event that the church holds on Sunday, right? Oh, I'm sorry, on Saturday. The church holds an event on Saturday, and then the pastor gets up on Sunday and says, we always want to thank everybody for coming out to the first annual Second Baptist Zion Church on the Hill Missionary Baptist crab feed that we had, right? And everyone's like, oh, yeah, it was wonderful. And the pastor says, I want to thank Sister So-and-so because without her, we couldn't have had all that crab. I want to thank Brother So-and-so because without him, we couldn't have the venue. And then he goes into his sermon. And you got somebody in the back who's like, but hold up. Like, I helped too. You know, like, without me, you wouldn't have the tables. Without me, you wouldn't have this. And pastor didn't say anything about me, right? And there's this fear that they're not going to be recognized. And so, and I don't know if you've seen them, but I've seen people like this, right? Where you're having a conversation with somebody, like, yeah, it was a great event, da-da-da. And then a person will walk up and like, oh, yeah, they're kind of like inject themselves into the conversation. Yeah, brother so-and-so did a great job, didn't he? Yeah, I gave him that idea because last year I was the chair of that event and, you know, it was a really successful event, so I figured I would just help him out. He didn't mention that to you, though, did he? Yeah. And they're just this fear that they're not going to be recognized for what they're doing, with their contributions. The Bible tells us, in the Bible, Christ says this. He says, one body, many parts.
Right, that's right.
One body, many parts, right? But it's still this idea of unity. Here's the thing. This is the way I look at it. Some of you know I have a weird imagination, but this is the way I look at it. When somebody smiles, what are some of the first things you notice about somebody's smile? Teeth. You might say, oh, what beautiful teeth you have. Your parents spent so much money on your braces, right? That's what I told my son. I said, we spend a lot of money, you're gonna have to smile. Smile, smile, smile. So it's like, you know, it's like, oh, what wonderful teeth you have. Or you may say, oh, your beautiful lips. Or look at your eyes, they sparkle, your whole face lights up, right? And you're just complimenting this person on their smile, the things that are readily available to see. But all the while, in the background, your gums are like, what about us? We're holding the teeth in place. Ain't nobody said nothing about the gums. Your gums look so healthy. Do you brush them every day? Like, how do you get your gums to be that way? Nope. Nobody's mentioning the gums. And at some point, your gums are like, I'd love to get a little recognition, right? Nobody's mentioning the tendons behind your face or your skin or your brain and your synapses that are telling your skin to put, you know, no one's mentioning all that stuff. But those are integral to making you smile. You can't smile without it. But nobody's mentioning any of that stuff. And so we have this fear of like, I'm not going to be recognized for my talent. No one's going to see me. No one's going to say, good job, I appreciate you. See, here's the thing. There are certain gifts that everybody has. There are certain talents that everybody has. And this may be a slightly off key, like for like maybe 2 weeks in advance, but I feel like I gotta say it, which is, you need to find what you do and what you do well and use those giftings in the church.
That's right.
Right? And it may not necessarily be, here's the thing, you may be doing something you're like, well, I don't necessarily want to be a greeter or work with the kids or do this, but you can utilize your talents in those areas anyway.
That's right.
There are ways for you to utilize your talents in those areas that'll help to continue to unify and build up the church, right? So we can't be afraid of using our giftings in those particular capacities. Instead, we have to say, look, whether people recognize what I'm doing or not, I know that God sees what I'm doing.
Right.
I know that He is appreciative of the service that I'm providing, the fact that I'm pouring my gifts and my talents into the church body, even if nobody says a word. Right? I don't know if you guys have gone on the website for Cityscape. There's some great pictures on the website.
Yep.
Ella took those pictures. That's a great job.
Yep.
We made. Do we have coffee this morning? I don't drink coffee. Do we have coffee this morning?
Yeah.
Somebody made that coffee. I don't know who it was. It may have been Chrissy. It may have been JoJo made that coffee. I don't know if it was good or not, but JoJo made that coffee. It was good, all right. The thing about it is that somebody did that.
That's right.
Somebody did that. Somebody contributed some of their time, some of their talent, some of their gift. We should recognize that.
That's right.
We should recognize that. And that's what God is calling us to do. He's like, look, we're all important. We're all important. And sometimes here's the thing. You have to be able to see things from somebody else's perspective.
Right. Good job.
I did a talk for some high school kids one time, and I asked them this question. I said, what does the phrase, the early bird catches the worm mean? And these kids were like, oh, that means if you wake up early, you're gonna have lots of opportunities, you're gonna do this. And they, typical stuff that you get for early bird catches the worm. Now there's one student sitting in the back, he wasn't saying anything. And I said, what do you think it means? I called him, said, what do you think it means? And he gave me the most interesting answer I've ever heard in my life. He said, I think it means you should never get up early. And I said, what do you mean? I said, what do you mean by that? He said, well, if you get up early, you might get eaten. And I was like, oh, snap. I was like, this kid is looking at it from the perspective of the worm. I said, I've never even seen that before, right? I'm like, he's looking at it from the perspective of the worm. He's not the bird, he's the worm. And so it made me think, and I'm like, we have got to, as church folks, we have got to start looking at things from other people's perspectives. You may be the person who's up here on the worship team, you may be preaching, you may be doing something else, and you say, yeah, everything's fine. What about the person who isn't getting that kind of recognition, though? Think about them. Think about how they feel. Sometimes it's good just to go and pat Craig on the shoulder and say, hey, man, I appreciate you, man, for watching the door. I appreciate you for sitting everybody down here. I appreciate you. Those things matter to people. It's what brings us together. That's what Christ is saying. One body, many parts. Everybody's important. When you start acknowledging the importance that everybody plays, then we start coming together as Christ designed it. Amen. Pride. Who in here is proud? I know. We all got pride problems. I do too. Okay. Pride. So I looked up a definition of pride because I like looking up definitions. Here's the definition. Pride is the quality of having an excessively high opinion of oneself or of one's importance. You start thinking you're more important than what you really are. And again, the Bible cautions us about that all the time, right? There's tons of verses in the Bible that caution us about pride. Pride comes before a fall. Right? Okay, so when I was in college, an organization that I'm part of, we were getting ready to put on an event. And so it was myself and about maybe 5 other people in my fraternity, and we're talking about how we're gonna put this event on. And so we get into this, it's not an argument, but it was a heated discussion that turned into an argument. We get into this discussion that turns into an argument about how much we should charge people. And so I said, look, man, we should be kind of respectful. Everybody's a college student. Let's try to make it, affordable. And so he was a tail, so he was tall dude. He was like, no, man, we the Sigmas, so who cares how much we charge? They're gonna pay it anyway. And so I said, why are you so arrogant, bro? I said, why are you so arrogant? And I said, have some humility. And so we started going back and forth, and all of a sudden, I was like, so what, you wanna go outside? You wanna go outside? This guy's like 1.5 feet tall. I'm like, you wanna go outside? Come on. We was ready to fight though, because I was like, man, we should have some humility. He was like, nah, man, we don't need to be humble, blah, blah, blah. But here's the thing, the Bible says this, if you want to be honored, the destination of honor is on the path to humility. Right? If you want to reach that destination where you're being honored, you have to walk through this valley of humility, man. It's important that we understand that there's value in serving, right? There's value in finding ways and spaces where you can make not necessarily make yourself smaller in terms of your importance, but make yourself smaller so that you're willing to maybe to do something that you think is maybe beneath you, so to speak, right? One of the things, I think I wrote down, I want to make sure I don't forget this. So one of the things is that, in Corinthians, in 1 Corinthians, that first chapter, 10 through 17, Paul's talking about this, right? He says, divisions in the church, we got to get rid of divisions in the church. One of the elements, and we see it a lot in Psalms and Proverbs, one of the elements that you see in biblical writing is this idea of repeating yourself, right? And if you repeat yourself, we know from all kinds of scholastic work and historical notions that when you repeat yourself, it means this is really, really important, okay? So Paul talks about this in chapter 1, and then in chapter 3, he talks about it again. He says, I got to go back and talk about this again, divisions in the church. So when I saw he talked about it in chapter 1, and talked about it again in chapter 3, I'm like, it's got to be important, right? He must be sensing there's something going on in the church, and this is an important thing to look at. In chapter 3, he talks about this. He says, one man plants, one man waters. He said, I love this. He says, but none of that really even matters. He said, because God makes it grow.
That's right. Good.
Here's the deal. At my house, I've planted a lot of stuff. I don't have a green thumb. I don't have a green thumb. But there's some stuff that has grown. I've watered, I've planted, waited for the sun, planted, watered, and sometimes it just doesn't grow, right? And I'm like, I don't know what else I can do. Like, I've done everything I can do. It's just not gonna grow. God brings the increase. There's nothing we can do. So you shouldn't start thinking so highly of yourself, like, oh yeah, I'm doing this, and God's got me doing that, and look what the position God put me in, and da-da-da-da. It's like, at the end of the day, here's a secret. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter, because God is the one who brings the increase. God makes it grow. This is the thing that's important for me to understand, or at least it was important for me to see. God doesn't need you.
That's right.
I mean, if I'm just being honest, right? God doesn't need you. The Bible even says, what is man that you would even consider him, right? God doesn't need us. So it's a privilege that he's asking you to partner with him.
Come on.
I don't need you, he says, but I want you.
Yes.
Okay. I had a dream one night, and I woke up, I told my wife, I said, you gotta listen to this dream I just had. This is my dream. I see Jesus, and he's like in like Costco, right? Like he's like just in Costco. And he's walking down, he's got this huge shopping cart, he's walking down the aisles. But on the shelves are us, right? He's just picking us off the shelves. Just picking us off the shelves and putting us in the cart. And then he gets up to the front, God scans his Costco card. He's like, cool, you remember, right? He's like, okay, cool. And then he starts checking us out. Boop, boop. And then he stops. He says, are you sure you want this one? It's broke. It's a thief. It's a murderer. It's a liar. Jesus is like, yeah, put it in the car, put it in the car. Boop, boop. You sure you want this one? This one's angry. This one's vile. This one's repulsive. Now put it in the car, put it in the car. At the end of checking us out, Jesus got all this stuff. He's super, I see his face, he's super proud. He's like he just did some good shopping, right? Like he just got a deal or whatever. And so he got this cart full of all these broken people, all these things that don't work. And God is like, are you sure you want this? Like, it's still not too late. And she's like, no, I want them. And then this is what God said. In my dream, this is what God said. He goes, the price is still the same, though. It's still gonna cost your life. I'll tell you this much right now. When I woke up, this is what I said. I said, I would never pay full price for broken stuff. But Jesus said, I just want them. I just want them.
Thank you, God.
Right? He is all about bringing us together. He's all about unity. He's saying, look, I don't need you, but I want you. I want you to be here. So stop thinking so highly of yourself like I owe you something. Instead, bring yourself lower and understand that what I'm trying to do requires that you take whatever pride you have and stuff it down and say, Lord, I just want to be a part of whatever you're doing.
Yes.
He's trying to help us understand that we don't need to be involved in these needless fights, right? That's what was going on in the church of Corinth. It's like, why are you involved in all this needless stuff? You're spending so much energy fighting against each other, and then two things happen. One, you don't accomplish anything, and then the world sees you and says, I don't want to be a part of that mess.
Right. That's good.
That's what happens. The church's image doesn't need to be rebranded. We just need to go back to the way that things were doing in the early church and say, why don't we just stop bickering and stop fighting and come together, and we'll see our numbers explode. We'll see people say, well, who's the God that you serve?
Yes.
Okay. So I'm trying to make sure I say, okay, cool, I got a few minutes. Okay, here we go. All right. Couple things. Three things. I think I have it up here. 3 things that we can do right now to build more unity. 3 things we can do right now to build more unity. Here's the thing. First one, change the narrative from competitive to collaborative. Change the narrative, right? So here's the deal. When you encounter someone, or even whether they're asking you or you're asking them, instead of that person, he said, "Oh, how big is your church?" Instead of that, change the narrative, right? Just be like, because this is what I'm thinking. Instead of me like asking somebody how big their church is, instead let me say, "Hey, what are you guys studying right now in church?"
Yes.
Right? I'd love to come visit, or maybe you'd like to come visit my church, or maybe we can partner together and bring the 2 bodies together for an event. That would be awesome, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
Right? Change the narrative. Stop talking about how big mine is or how big yours is and where you go and where I go. Who cares? If we're both trying to achieve the same goal that Christ has called us to, then let's just work together.
Yeah.
Change the narrative. We have every ability within our own selves to make sure that conversation takes a different slant.
That's right.
Right? Celebrate those people who are behind the scenes. Celebrate the people behind the scenes. And it doesn't take much, right? Sometimes just telling somebody, "Hey, good job.
Yep.
That was awesome.
Yep.
Pastor Jenny, you're doing those slides awesome today, man." Right? so it's like you can celebrate people behind the scenes. It doesn't take much to do that, right? And it's not just, again, let me say this, it's not just here. It's even, in your households, in your jobs. We take that everywhere. My grandma used to say, it don't cost nothing to be nice. It don't cost nothing to be nice. And you'll be surprised how quickly that changes, how quickly and how kind of exponentially it changes people's approach, right? At my job, I've learned over the last year and a half that sometimes, I feel like I'm a nice person anyway, but sometimes just going a little extra. My admin assistant, she loves these, what do they call it? Kombuchas, right? She loves those kombuchas. So like, I'll go to the store, I'll just pick her up some, I'll just leave them on her desk. And she'll be like, "Oh, you got me kombuchas." And I'm like, yeah, I got you some kombuchas, right? And then she's just like, "Oh my gosh." She's like, "Thank you so much." And not that she has a bad attitude, but I'm saying, like, the way in which she responds, not just to me, but to everyone who walks into that space, so much different, right?
Yeah.
So much different. It's like, look at what you can build when you start celebrating people. And she does a lot of work. She does a lot of work that sometimes is not celebrated at all, right? She does the work of, quote unquote, keeping the lights on for that office. But it's like, I want to make sure she understands, I want to recognize you for all the stuff you're doing. Even if nobody else is, I'm going to recognize you and say, "You're doing an awesome job. I appreciate you. Thank you so much." That's something that we can do, and that'll change the narrative, because now, when you start doing that, it gives you opportunity to now encourage people in their giftings.
Good.
Because now they're ready to listen to you, right?
Right.
It's like, "Hey, man, you did an awesome job. You did an awesome job. What do you love? Is this something you love to do? Do you love doing this? Well, you know what? Let me help you. Let me figure out a way for you to do this even more. Let me figure out how we can, build you up in your giftings and your talents," right? That's what we're trying to do. We're trying to make sure we get people into a place where they're saying, I want to explore all the different talents and gifts that God has given me and invest those into the body of Christ. And then last one is rewind? Rewind and remind. There was a movie called Be Kind and Rewind. But this is rewind and remind. This is something that honestly, I used to do this. I haven't done it as much anymore. And this is something for me. I need to get back to doing that. So, I know it's hard for some of you to believe, but when I was in middle school, I was kind of a scrawny little kid. But when I got to college, I turned into this stud. I was like, right. So, but here's the thing. This is what I used to do. I used to have this picture of me when I was in middle school. And I took that picture and I pasted it on a 3x5 card, and I put it inside of this book that I read all the time. And so every now and again, when I was in college and I felt like I got a little too big for my britches, I'd open that bad boy up and I'd look at the picture, and I have a little inscription that says, "Don't forget where you came from," right? Don't forget where you came from. Just a little reminder every now and again. Guess what? You ain't as great as you think you are. Bring yourself down, right? Those are things we can do. Whatever it is for you, just to remind yourself, just to rewind to a previous time and say, look at where I was and look at where God brought me. Right? I shouldn't get so high because it's so easy for me to slip back to that. But by God's grace, you see, here's the thing. Here's God's grace and here's God's mercy, right? God's grace is giving us something we don't deserve. God's mercy is not giving us what we do deserve, right? And so it's like when you look back and you say, man, look at God's grace and look at God's mercy. Look at where I could have been. Look at what I could have been. Look at what could have happened to me. Look at all that. I have no reason to puff myself up at all. It's nothing I've done. It's all because God has been so graceful and so merciful to allow me to be in this position. Let me bring myself way, way, way down and stop trying to make it seem like I'm bigger than what I am.
That's right. Thank you, Lord. That's right.
Sometimes I think every now and again some people will compliment me or they'll compliment my wife or compliment my kids, and I try to deflect and be like, oh, it's not a big deal. Don't worry about it. It's not that I'm not appreciative of the compliment. I am. What it is I don't want, my dad always tells me this, he says, don't read your press clippings, right? Don't start buying into the hype, essentially. And so I'm appreciative of the compliments, but at the same time, I recognize that the path to honor is the road of humility. That's what matters. That's what matters. Because I'll tell you this much. You can either humble yourself or you can let God humble you. And I guarantee you, you may not necessarily appreciate the methods God uses to humble you. I'll tell you that from personal experience, right? You may be like, oh Lord, I'm so sorry, right? So there are things that we have to keep in mind. So here's it, and then we're done. I think, okay, I got 22 seconds. Watch this. All right. So here's the deal. Here's the thing that we need to keep in mind. And hopefully, this has been something that has been manifest and has been shown throughout this entire thing. Turn this off so it doesn't- Okay, here's the deal. When we're engaged in this kind of bickering and fighting and deunification within the church, what happens for us? And we start worrying about who should lead and who should do this and all the other different things that go along with it. Not only does it have the effect of deunifying us as the body of Christ, but all we do is just reinforce negative stereotypes people have about the church, right? If we want this to be a place that's not just welcoming, but also that's growing and that people feel comfortable to come to, then we have to be willing to do the work that allows us locally to be unified and then globally to be unified, right? So that people will see us and say, hey, you don't fit the mold of what I thought when I thought about Christians. I thought this. And it's like, well, you should come check this out, right? You should come check this out. And that's what Paul was just trying to get across to the church of Corinth. He's like, we can see everything grow in such an exponential way if you essentially get out of your own way, right? Get out of your own way. Stop trying to be involved in all these divisions that don't mean anything. These pointless conversations. Amen? Amen. Let's stand to our feet. Let's just